My name's Kevin Drake. I head up Enterprise Release Management at Lincoln Financial Group, and I'm based out of the Hartford office. So I'm excited to be here for several reasons. One, my son's here in this audience. He's starting off his IT career, and he wants to learn. And I think what's also important for all of us is we're here to learn as well, right? Like was just mentioned. DevOps, it's a journey. We're going to touch upon that. But the key is no matter what our age is and where we are in our career, we want to learn. And when we're dealing with these new culture changes and transformations, it's exciting. So whether you're 1 year into your career or 23 like myself, et cetera, right? I think we're all to the point where we're sort of like that sponge. We want to absorb new tools, new technology, new processes, so that's pretty exciting. So I'm going to talk about setting the stage for DevOps. Then I'm going to pivot into enterprise release management and our journey at Lincoln Financial, okay? So, while we're in the state of New York, I wanted to use a landmark that applies to what I want to talk about today, so Niagara Falls. And we have a few Canadians in the audience too, and I prefer the Canadian side as well. But what's important here with Waterfall is while it applies to some projects still today, right, it still has a large landscape, I think we can agree that we're shifting to Agile, okay? So Agile is gaining momentum. There we go, okay? So again, while we start with the evolution of Waterfall, we're making that next step to Agile, okay? And I felt if I just started to jump in and start talking about DevOps without planting some seeds of how we got here, that this would be beneficial to some of the folks that might not know how DevOps has evolved, okay? So what is Agile, right? The four underlines here are really important because you're gonna see when we talk about DevOps and when we saw in the previous slide, right, with fast delivery and collaboration and feedback, a lot of the DevOps principles are based on Agile and Lean practices. So collaboration, fast delivery, teamwork, accountability. And as we see in the slide here, right, there's this evolution of Waterfall to Agile, right, which starts accelerating the software delivery process. Then comes this term called DevOps, right, the marriage of development and operations. And we're starting to get faster feedback, right? Automation's getting introduced, okay? And then that sets us up even further for continuous delivery, right? And really that's the next step in the phase, okay? So we're releasing code to production in an automated fashion. But the key here is not just the vertical, it's also the vertical here of as you progress in your software delivery journey, the quality of software increases, as do your number of releases, okay? So what is DevOps? It's the elephant in the room. Everyone has an idea of what DevOps is. I'm learning every day, like I said earlier, it's exciting, right? DevOps has really forced me to read more books, attend events, speak, right? It's really getting me excited about my IT career and where it can go. And what I know about DevOps today is going to change by the time I listen to Troy and I hear from others, right? So we're always learning. So to me, right, and at Lincoln Financial, DevOps, it's a culture change. It's a transformation. It's not an overnight success, right? It's a journey. So it's a marriage, as I said, of development and operations. And it's based on lean practices and agile best practices too, okay? So as that evolution went from waterfall to agile to DevOps, right, we're gonna start to get into continuous delivery too. But the concept is that you build it, you own it. So you're a product team, you're developing a product, and that moves into production. You don't punt the ball to the production support maintenance team. we're building on a model so that the people that build the product, they own it. They're going to fix it. They own it from start to finish, the care and feed, okay? So automation. So there's really 4 key areas I want to talk about when we talk about DevOps. There's obviously a lot more, but for the sake of time, I really want to touch upon automation, fast feedback, removing constraints, and collaboration. Okay, so automation. Right here we have an assembly line. Well, we're not building cars at Lincoln Financial, and you're not probably building cars either, right? But the concept of automation applies to DevOps. So what can we do with our releases, right? We can automate emails. Think about all the email that is sent during a production implementation that you have. We can automate deployments. So here's an example. I make a code change. I email Patrick to say it's done, right? Patrick goes into a tool, clicks some buttons, emails me back to say, hey, Kevin, I did my work for you. Go test it. Then I email somebody else to go test it. What do? They take that action, and then they email me back to say, I'm done with the testing, Kevin. Okay? That process takes time, right? It could be several minutes, depending on your current process. It could be an hour or 2, right? So by automation, right, emails, deployments, it's not just application deployments and integration, right? It's infrastructure. It's database, right? It's mainframe, like what Configure provides. So it's really taking a look at your manual tasks that exist today, and where do you want to start with your automation? It could be starting with just email and getting people excited about not having to send an email all the time. Build that out as a task, and I'll explain that and what we're doing currently in our journey at Lincoln Financial. Another area, testing, right? You can automate your notifications, your deployments, other tasks, but then you don't want your bottleneck to be testing. You want it to be continuous. So with automation, right, the goal is to automate as much as possible. You're probably never going to be 100% automated because there's always maybe that those manual tasks such as establishing a kickoff meeting, right? You're going to do a walkthrough. You really can't automate that, but all the steps that are part of the plan that you're talking about are automated, okay? So that's the first area, automation. The next one's fast feedback. So I like this example because if you're familiar with the Phoenix project and the DevOps handbook, it starts talking about the lean manufacturing, and this is an example at the Toyota manufacturing plant, right? They have what's called the andon cord. Anybody at any time in that production line can pull the cord if they find a defect, okay? So how does this relate to IT and DevOps? Well, if I see it, I'm coding something, someone's testing somebody, they're not pulling a cord, right, at Lincoln or at your company, but the concept is that with the DevOps team, you get your fast feedback because as soon as there's an issue, people are empowered to be able to stop it and fix it, and it's going to get addressed. Versus in the waterfall process, right? It takes weeks, months before your code can get tested at times. So with Agile and DevOps, we're getting faster feedback, okay? When you become mature with DevOps and you have fast feedback, right, you're going to be more agile to meet your business needs, okay? Third area I want to talk about is removing constraints. So there's 3 key areas: people, process, and technology. I don't know if you read the Phoenix project, but from a people constraint perspective, Brent is that guy. He's involved in every project. He knows every system. But Brent can't do it all himself. He tries, but there's delays. So if you have teams or individuals that are always involved in your projects, right? Ends up being a constraint in the DevOps model. So you got to cross-train. You got to provide knowledge transfer, right? You got to remove that constraint from a people perspective to allow you to progress in what you need to do in your journey, okay? The process perspective is maybe you're working on the so-called mission-critical work, but yet that work doesn't align back to corporate strategic goals. So what you think you're working on doesn't equate to what the business really wants. That's a constraint. So you have to align yourself towards the business goals and make that your priority when you're developing work in DevOps, okay? Technology perspective. At your table, you'll see a periodic table of DevOps tools, right? Maybe you're managing your releases with spreadsheets or email, or you're testing in a very manual way. Remove that technology strain. Utilize tools that will help you. It's going to help solve some of the problems and pain points that you have. Now, earlier we were joking that this mic was could come off and I could walk around the audience here, and Jennifer was saying, oh, we can do a rap or something, and I was saying, well, she must have seen this slide, because Vanilla Ice is here. And I'm not going to go into the rap, and I'm not even going to cue up the song, but what's important is collaboration, okay? So we want to talk and we want to listen, okay? And we want to do it often. So teams that have this culture of strong collaboration and have built out that philosophy, right, operate with greater speed, productivity, and efficiency, okay? So it's so important in anything we do, right, in our roles, in our even personal life. You want to listen, right, talk and collaborate, okay? And maybe we could get this playing at break time. That would make my day. Okay, so we've talked about 4 key operational areas, or 4 functions rather, of DevOps, right? Automation, fast feedback, removing constraints, and collaboration. Now I want to focus on the flow, and that's really going to set the stage up for my release management discussion. So, right, we don't want that drip coming out. We don't want to be in the waterfall mindset of having a known start and end date and have to wait a long duration for certain tasks to occur before you move on to something else, right? We want to get to DevOps. We want continuous delivery. We want continuous flow through our release pipeline, right? So in this example, right, version control, build, unit test, deploy, auto test, deploy to production, measure, validate, right? What's the key for this whole cycle? Production feedback, okay? So as we do version control, as we're doing build, we're constantly iterating. We're finding out what's working and then addressing it quickly before we progress. And the constant, again, is this feedback loop, okay? So Agile introduces us to feedback. DevOps kind of kicks it up a notch, okay? So this is also at your table. I had no idea, otherwise I guess I would have taped it up on the screen. But the point here is there's so many tools to choose from, okay? And there's a lot more tools than what's depicted on this Xebia's periodic table of DevOps tools. There's build, right? There's CI tools, release management, testing, right? So it can be overwhelming. It was for me, right? I'm vetting out tools for release management, and there's a lot out there, right? So we want to make sure that we selected a vendor who we can partner with, and we found that with XebiaLabs. So go through the process of reading industry, Gartner, Forrester, right, Magic Quadrant, those types of tools. I think we all do that no matter what we're doing, right? Talk to your network. Find out what other companies are using. right? This is a great venue to learn about other tools that other organizations are using. But the key is that you want to select a partner, not so much a vendor, and you want to make sure that you're going to be on your journey with DevOps. You want to make sure that you're using tools that are high quality and easy to use. Okay, so big difference, right? Someone can sell you a tool, and then you start using it, and it's a frustrating experience. You don't want that, especially when you're dealing with enough change trying to roll out Agile or DevOps, okay? So this really kind of paints the picture. So let's quickly recap where we're at. So we talked a little about Agile, okay? And then that really sets the stage for DevOps. And with DevOps, we start getting involved in continuous integration, right? CI. We start getting involved in continuous testing, right? Testing run automatically based on the deployments in the environment. It's not manual, doesn't take weeks, doesn't take half dozen people to do the testing, right? The tools now we're integrating, and that work is being automated. We start getting into continuous monitoring, right? That's kind of the core 3 tiers of DevOps here, and then ultimately we get to continuous delivery, right? Moving code through the environments in an automated fashion, right? That's continuous delivery. So for me, how I like to think of it as, if we, and at Lincoln, we're going through not only an Agile transformation, where we're shifting and pivoting from waterfall to Agile, and we have an aggressive goal to get to 30% delivery in Agile by the end of this year. And then we're also spinning up DevOps at the same time, while I'm rolling out XL release across our enterprise. So there's a lot of change going on. Not just that I'm rolling out a software tool, but we're trying to roll out a culture change, a philosophy change. It's exciting, but it's challenging, right? So this picture, right, this model of Agile, DevOps, and continuous delivery, when we get there, I'm going to have a smiley face, and so won't Lincoln, right? And I hope you do too. Because if you get to that state, you're going to become what's called a high performer. So how we define, or how we're defining delivery performance, right, based on productivity, profitability, market share, right? Where do you rank? Are you high, medium, low? High performers, right, we can look across the top. They have the best lead time, deploy frequency, the mean time to restore, right? How long it takes to restore service when there's a service incident, production issue, right? Or what's your change fail percentage? Right now, there's some areas where we think we're high performers, but we're not across the board. So you might be, like us, maybe 1 or 2, where you're a high performer. But maybe, right, your lead time might be 1 to 6 months, but yet you deploy a little bit faster, okay? So again, the point is that the high performers, right, let's think about high performers, right? Netflix, Amazon, Lyft, et cetera, right? These are like the unicorns of DevOps, right? But they started somewheres. We are, you will too, right? But the goal, if you get to become a high performer, what's going to happen? So you're gonna have faster lead time. So how long does it take from code deploy to the dev environment through production? It depends. If it's a waterfall project, that could take, and it's like tied to a life insurance product release, it can take 8 months. So how do we streamline that process through Agile and DevOps to bring our products to the market quicker, right? So that's going to be an effort that we're going to tackle, and we will improve as a result our lead time, okay? Deploy frequency. How often is code deployed? Eventually, it's going to be on demand, and it's going to be automatic versus manual, right? So, again, where do you want to be? You want to be a high performer. It's going to take time. This is a journey, right? I'm going to pivot to release management. So as I said earlier, I am the enterprise release management lead at Lincoln. And I'm also a key player in our DevOps transformation, supporting Agile as well. So, a little funny picture here, right? I feel through this new role and identifying release individuals, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, but I really feel like I'm herding cats because we don't have centralized release management today. We're very vertical and siloed in our release management practice. And as it pertains to DevOps, it's really the vital bridge between deployment, testing, and production. So it aligns with our DevOps strategy. So how do we go about that from a release management perspective? I'm looking at release management as a foundational layer for our DevOps journey that we can build upon. So how do we get started? Okay, so another example that I like to share when I'm training people or kind of pitching this transformation effort of replacing their Microsoft Excel spreadsheets or project plans or Word documents to a release management tool or an application release automation tool, which is now the new brand naming of Excel Release and others, is really, think of it you're at a symphony, okay? And there's the conductor up front. And what's the conductor's job? To make sure the strings, the horns, the percussion are all playing in tune, right? If they didn't, it would be off key, a miserable experience, and you'd all exit the door, right? So what a release management software tool does is it orchestrates your releases, okay? So that's going to help you get to DevOps. Okay, and that's what we've done at Lincoln. So Lincoln needed a tool that would complement our enterprise release management practice and align to our DevOps strategy. Okay, we vetted out several tools. As seen in that earlier slide, there's a lot to choose from, whether it's source control, release management, testing, right? Like I was saying, you want to pick one that's high quality, easy to use, and you have a partner with. It's just not a vendor, right? So we've built a solid relationship. We actually started about 3-4 years ago with XL Deploy. So we started with deployments first, and now we're seeing the benefits of that through our automation efforts with XL Release, okay? So we needed a tool that would align to our enterprise release management practice to help out with some governance and process control, because again, we're decentralized today. This is gonna help me on the practice side. But from a tooling perspective, it also aligns to our DevOps strategy. And we can start integrating build tools, testing tools, deployment tools, et cetera, into our release pipeline with a tool like this, okay? So we started with a proof of concept. And we progressed to a pilot. And we did that in our digital space, which was a little bit more mature, a little more cutting edge, right? Web apps, mobile, web services, things like that. And the other reason was that was our early adopters of Agile and our Scrum teams. So we went with a pilot. So this is a great takeaway for those that haven't started in their journey, right? That maybe you can leverage, okay? We're going through this process now across our enterprise. So we really started with this pilot, and while this order's a little bit scattered, but really we identified the pilot team, right? So identify who's going to be your audience, if you will, to start, right? It's best to have dedicated resources, and if you're mature with Agile already, and they're in a pod, right, in one central location, that's best practice. But in today's virtual world, it might not apply to everybody. It doesn't always for us. So we make the best that we can do with tools, technology to help with that, right? Determine the in-scope applications. Well, we want to handle deployments, testing, We want to integrate with Exchange. We want Active Directory. We want to integrate maybe with our work intake system, our change request system, et cetera, right? So identify the applications that are in scope. And you don't want to just jump right to automation. You need to start with defining what your current workflow is so you can get onto your automated journey. And for us, we did that with manual tasks. So we built out all the tasks in all environments, starting with just our production implementation plans. What's involved with a production release? What are all the tasks? How long does each task take? That's going to allow us to get to a baseline for each task. That when we start to automate, we can true back to and determine what our efficiency gain is, right? Senior leadership, what's the cost saves? What's the efficiency gains? It's hard to determine that without a guesstimate, but as we know, guesstimates and estimates aren't really accurate. But by establishing that initial baseline through our manual workflow, we're able to get there, and we are. That way, it allows us to view the dashboards, and ultimately, as we share our success and we move forward, that paves the way for enterprise adoption. So despite all the success we had with our proof of concept, our pilot, we aren't 100% DevOps yet. We're not even 100% Agile yet. We can't roll this tool out and be DevOps overnight and automate all of our tasks. It takes time. We're looking at it as a multi-year transformation. And for a legacy insurance company, that might be aggressive, but we'll do our best to hit that target, right? So it's really two phases. So with our pilot, and as we're rolling this out to the enterprise, it's herding the cats, and then we're focusing on the flow, okay? So our current state is that spreadsheet. So I've been in the process the past couple weeks of training dozens of release teams within our company. We don't have a dedicated team. I sure wish we did, because I wouldn't have about 12 WebEx discussions over the past 2 weeks. And I don't have a lot of hair either to start with, so it's been pretty stressful. But we're getting the message across, and it's working out extremely well, to the point where now people that we trained last week are like, can we start using this in production? When can we start talking to you about automation? Now, that's not everybody, but a handful are, and that's pretty cool. So we're not fighting the battle anymore, right? They're coming to the battle with us, and that's exciting. So we're starting with our spreadsheet, right? What are the tasks involved with the manual workflow as it pertains to production implementations? Again, this is just what we're doing. There's other ways to skin the cat, if you will. So we want to look at, from a production implementation plan perspective, what are the 4 phases of our releases? So we identified pre-implementation tasks. There's always work that goes on before you start to implement something. Agreed? So what are those? Schedule, review, implementation walkthrough meeting, submit the change request, submit your CI logs, et cetera, right? Do that prep work. What are the implementation tasks? So it's go live time, right? Who's involved? What's the task? How long is the duration for each one of those tasks? Again, we wanted to capture the duration for each task so we can true back and get that baseline data, so that when we start to automate, we can say we've gained a 35% efficiency gain or a 10% efficiency gain. Or you know what, we haven't even automated this stuff yet, so we gotta focus on doing those maybe infrastructure tasks, right? So we have the pre-implementation, the implementation, post-implementation, right? There's always work that occurs in a release that we do after it releases. And then we have the backout tasks, rather, so that phase. We found there's some teams that didn't have backup plans in their releases. So that's not good. If something happens, right, and we saw in the earlier slide, a mature DevOps has a quick restoration model. Well, if you don't have a backup task and there's an issue and you don't know what to do to restore service, that's not good. So as part of the practice side, by rolling out XL release, we're really forcing a governance too. So everybody is building a template that has backup tasks. I'm fortunate to be able to be involved in that culture where it's not that much of a roadblock, okay? But the point with automation is start slowly, automate environments, get people to feel warm and fuzzy in an environment before you automate to the next, right? Think of it as baby steps, crawl, right? Walk, run, same concept. So ultimately, we're going to get to automation across all environments for our entire enterprise. We've done it in our digital space. It took 3 months from pilot to automation and production. That was like our guinea pig. So we learned a lot. We iterated a lot, right? We had feedback along the way. So now we've developed training materials based on that learning experience that's helping us further advance DevOps and particularly this release management tool across our enterprise, okay? So as we get the initial baseline, we're going to be able to start determining where we need to focus our initial automation efforts. Tools will be able to help you with dashboards and metrics. What's the longest task? What's the longest phase? You'll be able to get visibility that you never had before, right? For us, with the spreadsheet, SharePoint was being stored, right? These implementation plans were in SharePoint. They were in network drives. They were emailed around back and forth. Now, we have enterprise visibility across all our lines of business through the tool for just production releases. So that's going to help us really set the stage for automation and get us to the point with DevOps. So again, we had a successful pilot. We know we want to roll it out to the enterprise. It's a journey. We're not just diving into the deep end, right? We got to put our little arm floaties on and get acclimated to swimming before we can become an Olympic diver, right? So this is really just another visual, right? From a pilot perspective, we showed that, but from an enterprise perspective, it's really the same. It's just to a bigger audience. More people, more lines of business. It's much easier to train 6 people than it is 200. But same thing with teams. You're going to be automating with various teams, various skill sets, right? So we identified the release individuals across the enterprise. Every time I think I've identified the right amount or the right people across my enterprise, I find out there's another 6 that need to get access to the tool, or there's more people that need to be trained, or find out that they really don't do that role in the context that we're trying to roll out the strategy for. So that's a learning experience for all of us. And it's also sets us up for training and onboarding the users. So our approach is we want to train the release individuals, onboard them, build up a solid user community of this tool, right? That's going to allow us to gain momentum and fight that culture change battle and that philosophy that's out there around DevOps to allow us to get to automation and to allow us to build out DevOps teams. So we also want to solidify an engineering team, right? That's a different role than a release individual. A release individual is someone that hits the keyboard to manage a plan. An Excel release, to start off in the manual workflow, they're managing that plan. Again, manual workflow for production implementations. But at some point, we're going to start automating, so we need engineers. So those are like the DevOps engineers. They're the folks that work with the dev teams, application development teams, to automate tasks. So we're spinning up an engineering team. Establishing a support model. Maybe you're fortunate to have a training team in-house or a dedicated support team that supports tools that you implement in your organization. I don't. So we're training virtually. We're establishing a support model that's virtual too, right? Distribution lists. That's not too exciting, but we're setting up user community meetings where it's a set calendar schedule for myself and an engineer, and it's optional to my release community. So if you have a question about the tool or you need guidance on how to build out your manual workflow, dial in, right? So we have to get creative. We have to be agile. Even as it was said earlier, right? Drink your champagne. We say eat your own dog food, right? That type of analogy really is true because you have to be flexible, adapt, and agile in your process that you're rolling out DevOps for. So again, communicate your approach. We have we're planning rather virtual roadshows, brown bag sessions, just to get more visibility of what we're doing, but then also kind of toot our own horn, right? We're really transforming the way that our IT and business are going to be interacting with. We're not there yet, but we're setting the stage and we're getting there, right? Dashboards, metrics. Again, that manual workflow is allowing us to get to baseline metrics that we can compare and true back to when we get to automation. If we don't know how long things take in a production release, we're not going to know what our efficiency gain is when we automate. Okay? We're also starting to track lead time, right? How long does it take from initial code drop in dev all the way through deployment and production, right? That's a key DevOps metric. Right now, also, we're just tracking, I've trained people, are they using the tool, right? How do we know they're really leveraging the tool's capabilities? When's their first release, in XO release, moving to production, right? We're tracking that too, by line of business. So we get senior leadership buy-in, which we have, and visibility to them as to our progress, okay? And that also ties to the communicate your success. So there's a lot of success when you do a proof of concept. You evolve to a pilot, okay? And then at some point, you're going to expand that to the enterprise. And that's our journey and what we've been doing at Lincoln Financial.